Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a crime film from the USA, English language, released in the year 2012, directed by Kern Saxton, and this film is called Sushi Girl. So Sushi Girl is a Yakuza thing, a Japanese mafia, where you've got this beautiful woman who gets naked, she lays on a table and she has food put upon her for a banquet of gangsters. And now basically the Sushi Girl can't make eye contact with anybody, she's basically got to be in a comatose state. She can't react to anything, and what she hears, she has to forget. And so it's a very strange sort of profession, but this is a profession that this woman in this film does for an American crime boss. This American crime boss, he's very much influenced by the Yakuza, and this is what he actually wants to do. And the reason why this woman is here this evening is because the gang boss is putting on a banquet for a prisoner who has been released after 6 years. Now, this prisoner, he used to be part of this gang, and he was sentenced to jail because of a robbery that went wrong. Basically, they robbed this jewelry store, and they took a lot of diamonds, but it went missing. And so this guy was actually caught, he was thrown in prison for 6 years, and he didn't say a word. And so when the prisoner's released and he's called back to the boss's hideout, he believes that he's okay because he showed his loyalty by not grasping on anyone. But what this prisoner doesn't realise is that he's here for a very sinister intention. It's not necessarily a celebration, but it's more a quest for the truth. And getting that truth, even if it means torture of a past friend, it is basically they're going to stop at nothing to get what they believe is rightfully theirs. And so what happens, it's going to turn into a very, very violent night, and what happens from that point on is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on Sushi Girl. This is a very, very interesting film, and I think for the most part it does execute itself to a point where you feel as though you're glad that you spent 90 minutes of your life experiencing what Kern Saxton had to deliver, but there's still that feeling in the film that I thought it wasn't really as daring as it really needed to be to create a shadow of its own. This is a movie that does pay a lot of respects to another filmmaker that I'll go into a little bit later, a little bit too much to the point of predictability. And when you've got that predictability in the film, I felt as though the suspense and the whodunit sort of and what's going on approach, it does eliminate itself to some extent to make it a very disposable film. But I will go through the negatives a little bit later. But what I liked about the movie is that it is low budget, but it's very well made, and it's very intelligently made because it knows its limitations. And when a low budget movie knows its limitations, it never feels like a low budget film. It feels like a movie of a much higher budget. And so when you can actually disguise your lack of budget, I really like that in filmmakers, and I think a lot of low budget independent filmmakers actually do this very, very well. And so the fact that it's self-aware allows itself to actually show a lot more than it actually has. And so I really like that. It is a one-setting film set in this very stylish sort of banquet hall. I like the fact that it's interweaving Eastern culture with Western culture. As far as gangster films are concerned, you've got that Yakuza element thrown in there for good measure, and you've got that Western sort of gangster film where it's almost like Reservoir Dogs from Quentin Tarantino, where you don't know what's going on, who these characters are, what their intentions are. There's going to be twists and turns, there's going to be betrayal, and so I thought that it never really made me feel bored, and so I really liked that. I thought the acting was somewhat decent from Tony Todd. He is a legendary horror actor. You've got Mark Hamill, who plays the best character in my opinion, this psychotic homosexual guy who likes torture. You've got James Duval, who's been in a lot of low-budget independent American cinema, who I'm a big fan of. I really like this guy. I believe that he deserves a lot more recognition than he gets. And you've also got a cameo from Sonny Chiba, who is a legendary Japanese actor. And as I said, it's using that Japanese culture and it's interweaving it with Western culture, and that's the reason why I thought this movie was worth the effort. And so you've got dialogue. The movie is very heavily dialogue based, and I thought the dialogue was somewhat interesting. You've got a lot of humorous elements, so it's a very dark sort of humour that the movie possesses. That actually made me laugh here and there, especially from Mark Hamill's character. You've also got shocking violence that really took me by surprise. This movie in Australia is rated MA15+, but I wasn't quite prepared for how brutal the film will get. And this is another example of how useless the classification system here is in Australia, is that it's MA15+, but it's a lot more brutal than some R18 movies out there. So you're never quite sure what you're going to get in Australia as far as classification is concerned, because I don't feel like they actually watch the same film that the viewer is actually watching. And so I was left scratching my head thinking, how does this get MA15+, whereas a lot of other films out there get R18+, and it's not nearly as graphic and violent as this movie was. And so as far as horror fans, or the more extreme violent fans are concerned, don't let the MA15+ put you off, because there are some very, very well shot scenes of violence and torture that will actually appeal to that style of fan. So there's a horror element in there as far as torture is concerned, but there's a gangster sort of Quentin Tarantino element and the grindhouse element as well, especially from the opening and closing credits. I felt as though I'm watching something of a homage to grindhouse film. And so I thought, okay, the movie is, as I said, it warrants 90 minutes of your life. You're not going to really feel as though you've been wasted. But unfortunately, the movie, it could have been a little bit better than it was. I felt as though it was trapped in its shell. It didn't have the confidence to actually put itself on the chopping block and actually give it the risk of succeeding or not. Basically, what it does, it takes the safe option of actually getting a piggyback from Quentin Tarantino. This is a movie that felt like Reservoir Dogs. It actually... the formula is very similar to Reservoir Dogs. You've got a group of criminals who are wanting to know what went wrong, and you've got flashbacks actually giving you that story. So this is something I've seen before, and it's something that was very successful before. Therefore, Kern Saxton has said, okay, well, I'm going to actually recycle what Quentin Tarantino does so well. So this is going to appeal to Quentin Tarantino fans, that unfortunately what you're going to say to yourself is, okay, I've seen this film before. I've seen Reservoir Dogs, so I know how this movie is going to unfold. And so the predictability in the film does hurt it quite considerably, is because I thought a lot of the mystery that the movie is banking itself on is eliminated, because it's like a cheat sheet. You have seen this before, therefore you know how it's going to turn out. You've also got that strong dialogue based, and so once again it is very Quentin Tarantino-esque. So I felt as though this is more of a fan-made film paying respect and worshipping Quentin Tarantino, as opposed to actually making something that is Kern Saxton. That is actually making something that, okay, he's putting his hand up, he's saying, I'm going to take a risk. If it works, that's excellent. You know, this is a Kern Saxton film, but if it doesn't work, at least he's taking the risk. But I never felt as though he was taking that risk, and the risk, the riskless sort of nature that this film has, makes it that very disposable film. And so the twist I actually saw coming from a long way away. I thought, okay, well, this is what's going to happen, and yes, it actually happens that way. And so you do eliminate a lot of the mystery, and when a movie is actually banking itself on what is going on and who did this and who did that, I kind of think it eliminates the purpose of the film, and so that disposable nature does dampen it to some extent. But overall, as I said, it's very well made. You've got some very memorable characters, especially Mark Hamill's character, and so if you are a fan of Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs, then I'm pretty sure you're going to like Sushi Girl. But don't get your hopes up for something that is going to blow you out of the water. This is definitely a one-view sort of film, a very disposable, but I just thought that, okay, I'm not angry that I actually used 90 minutes of my life to experience what this director had for me, and so it is definitely an enjoyable time, and it's in a time that I'm going to be recommending. So overall, for Sushi Girl, I'm going to give this one 3 stars. Go out there and see it. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.